At my sister's birthday dinner, I found my name scribbled on a napkin at the kids' table. My mom smirked. "We thought it would be more fitting." I just walked over, retrieved the designer purse I bought her, and said, "Consider this ungifted." Then I left. 20 minutes later, she was calling me from the parking lot, furious. The moment I walked into that upscale restaurant for my sister's birthday dinner, I should have known something was wrong. The hostess smiled too brightly, the kind of smile that says she's already been briefed on whatever drama is about to unfold. My family was already seated at their usual spot, the big round table in the center where they could command attention and make sure everyone heard their conversations. But as I scanned the familiar faces, looking for my place, something cold settled in my stomach. My father was deep in animated conversation with Kevin, my brother-in-law, probably discussing some new get-rich-quick scheme that would never materialize. My sister Melissa sat like a birthday princess, her friends clustered around her, wine glasses already half empty despite it being early evening. And there was my mother, positioned at the head of the table like a queen holding court, wearing that particular smirk I'd learned to dread over the years. I looked for my name card. Nothing next to Melissa, which would have been natural for her only brother. Nothing near my parents. My eyes swept the table again, confused, until my mother's voice cut through the restaurant chatter. "Looking for your seat, honey?" Her tone was sugar-sweet with an edge that could cut glass. "We thought it would be more fitting for you." She gestured toward the far corner of the restaurant, and my heart sank. There, tucked away like an afterthought, sat a small, wobbly table clearly meant for children. 2 booster seats were stacked to one side, crayons scattered across the surface, and in the center, like a cruel punchline, was a folded napkin with my name scribbled across it in thick black marker. The laughter that rippled through the main table wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. I felt the heat crawl up my neck as the reality of the situation hit me. This wasn't a mistake or an oversight. This was deliberate humiliation, served up as entertainment for my sister's birthday celebration. What made it worse, infinitely worse, was knowing who these people really were. The same sister I'd been quietly bankrolling for years, whose rent I'd covered more times than I could count. The same mother who'd called me at midnight just 3 months ago, panicked about Melissa's utility bill. The same family who treated me like a walking ATM, yet apparently saw fit to seat me at the kids' table like I was some embarrassing relative they had to tolerate. I stood there for what felt like an eternity but was probably only 30 seconds, processing the scene. The gift bag in my hand suddenly felt heavier, $200 worth of designer handbag that Melissa had been obsessing over for months. I'd watched her run her fingers over the catalog picture like it was some kind of sacred object, talking about it at every family gathering until I finally decided to make her birthday special. Without a word, I walked straight to the main table. Every conversation stopped. Melissa's hand was already reaching for the elegant gift bag as I set it down in front of her, her eyes lighting up with anticipation. For just a moment, I saw genuine joy on her face, and it almost made me waver. Almost. Instead, I picked the bag back up, my voice steady and clear enough for everyone to hear. "Consider this ungifted." The silence that followed was deafening. I turned and walked toward the exit, feeling every pair of eyes in that restaurant burning into my back. Behind me, I could hear the shocked whispers starting, but I didn't look back. For the first time in years, I'd chosen my dignity over keeping the peace. I was 3 blocks away when my phone started buzzing. Melissa's face smiled up at me from the screen, a photo from some long-ago family barbecue when things were simpler, or at least when I'd been more willing to pretend they were. Old habits die hard, and despite everything I answered. "What the hell was that?" Her voice exploded through the speaker before I could even say hello. "You humiliated me in front of everyone! You couldn't just take a joke? You had to make everything about yourself on my birthday." Melissa never cried when she was angry. Instead, she sharpened her voice into a weapon, dissecting every perceived slight with surgical precision. She painted my exit as some kind of calculated sabotage, as if I'd planned the whole thing just to ruin her special day. "It was just a joke," she kept repeating. "Mom thought it would be funny. You took it way too seriously." When she finally paused for breath, I said calmly, "That's what happens when you don't value the one who's always been there for you." Her laugh was sharp and bitter. "There you go again, acting like your money makes you better than us." "No," I replied, my voice still steady despite the fire building in my chest. "I'm saying I've been keeping this family financially afloat for years, and tonight just showed me exactly how much that means to you." Before she could respond, I heard my mother's voice in the background, sharp and commanding. "Give me that phone." A second later, Mom was in my ear, her voice dripping with righteous indignation. "What is wrong with you? You caused a scene over nothing. You walked out like a spoiled child." "It's not nothing," I said. "It's years of me paying bills, covering emergencies, helping out whenever you needed it, and this is how I get treated at my own sister's birthday dinner. You're acting like money makes you better than us," she snapped, echoing Melissa's words exactly. "I'm saying I've been the family safety net for years, and tonight made it clear that earns me a seat at the kids' table." There was a pause, then she launched into her familiar routine about family jokes, and how I was being too sensitive, throwing everything away over a seating arrangement. Melissa grabbed the phone back, her voice quieter now but no less determined. "If you don't turn around and come back right now, don't bother talking to me again." For once in my life, I didn't try to smooth things over or find a compromise. "Okay," I said and hung up. I pulled into a closed gas station and sat in the darkness, my phone lighting up like a Christmas tree with notifications. Text after text poured in, from Mom, from various aunts and cousins, all variations on the same theme: come back. Fix this. Don't make it worse. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel like fixing anything. I didn't feel like apologizing for refusing to laugh at my own humiliation. I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time: done. By morning, my phone had become a war zone. Missed calls stacked in double digits, unread texts flooding in every few minutes. The first wave came from Mom, alternating between guilt trips and sharp accusations. One text read, "You embarrassed your sister in front of everyone. Do you feel proud?" 2 minutes later, "You need to fix this before the family thinks you've lost it." Then came the extended family. My Aunt Linda, who'd always prided herself on being the practical voice of reason, sent a lengthy message about not understanding where all this anger was coming from. My cousin Paul chimed in claiming he'd heard I'd stormed out like a kid over a harmless joke. The irony wasn't lost on me. None of them had actually been there to witness what happened, but they all had strong opinions about my reaction. Clearly, Mom had been busy spinning her version of events, one where I wasn't the generous brother bringing an expensive gift after years of financial support, but rather the unstable family member who couldn't take a joke. Around noon, even my dad weighed in with his typically brief message. "Your mom's upset. You should just apologize and move on." Move on. As if this was just a momentary overreaction instead of the culmination of years of being treated like a combination ATM, an emotional punching bag. In Dad's world, keeping peace with Mom was always worth more than addressing uncomfortable truths. Then Melissa decided to speak for herself, sending a wall of text that made my jaw clench. She listed every time I'd supposedly made her feel small, moments when I'd suggested Kevin find more steady work, times I'd asked about repayment schedules, instances where I'd mentioned their mounting bills. In her revisionist history, none of this was me being honest or helpful. It was me looking down on her, judging her choices, wielding my financial stability like a weapon. It was surreal. Every example she gave was connected to me stepping in to help them, but she'd reframed each instance as if I'd been trying to humiliate her all along. The more I read, the clearer it became. This wasn't really about the napkin at the kids' table. This was about the fact that the moment I stopped playing my assigned role, the reliable fixer who never complained, I'd become the villain. They weren't upset because I'd left the restaurant. They were upset because I'd shown them I could leave at all. That afternoon, I made a decision that would change everything. No more debating, no more trying to explain my perspective so they could twist it into something else. I'd been their dependable problem solver for years, and all it had earned me was the expectation that I'd show up, shut up, and pay up. I muted every family group chat, turned my phone face down, and pulled out my laptop. Buried in my files was an old spreadsheet I'd started years ago to track the temporary help I'd given Melissa and Kevin. I'd stopped updating it because looking at the numbers just made me feel foolish, but that night I decided to finish what I'd started. 2 hours later, I sat back and stared at the total. Even without counting the small things, dinners I'd quietly covered, surprise utility payments to prevent shutoffs, the number was staggering. It wasn't generosity anymore, it was sponsorship. I'd been funding a lifestyle they had no intention of changing, enabling a cycle of dependency that benefited no one. That realization gave me the clarity I'd been missing. I typed out one message in the main family chat. Taking a break from the family for a while. Please don't contact me unless it's a real emergency. No long explanations, no anger, just a clear boundary. I turned my phone off and went to bed, thinking that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning at work, my manager called me into her office and closed the door behind her, something she almost never did. She turned her computer screen toward me, revealing an email from an anonymous Gmail account. The message claimed I'd been displaying erratic behavior in public, that I'd stormed out of a family dinner in a fit of rage, and suggested that for everyone's safety, my workplace might want to keep an eye on me. My stomach dropped as I read the carefully crafted message. No signature was needed. I recognized my mother's voice in every line. The phrasing, the subtle digs masked as concern, the way it painted me as unstable without making direct accusations. This was psychological warfare, and she'd brought it into my professional life. I explained to my manager that there had been a personal family dispute, assured her it wouldn't affect my work, and emphasized that the email wasn't based in reality. She studied my face for a long moment before nodding, saying she believed me but wanted me to be aware of how perception could spread. Walking out of that office, my coffee now cold and my hands shaking with a rage I'd never felt before, I realized this had escalated far beyond birthday dinner seating arrangements. My mother had deliberately tried to sabotage my career, the one area of my life I'd managed to keep separate from their chaos. That night, I didn't just mute the chats. I blocked every single family member. Melissa, Kevin, Mom, Dad, the aunts and cousins who'd appointed themselves judges of my behavior. I even deleted the family group chat entirely from my phone. But even as I sat in the sudden quiet, I knew it wouldn't last. My mother didn't just let things go, she escalated. And something told me she wasn't finished yet. 3 days passed in blessed silence. Blocking them had been the first genuinely peaceful decision I'd made in years. My phone stayed quiet, my evenings belonged to me, and I didn't wake up to new disguised demands every morning. But I knew this was just the eye of the storm. With my mother, silence didn't mean surrender, it meant she was sharpening her weapons. On Saturday morning, the hammer fell. I just started making coffee when sharp, deliberate pounding echoed from my front door. Not the polite knock of a visitor, but the demanding thud of someone who wanted the entire building to know they were there. Through the peephole, I saw her, Mom, hair perfectly styled, coat buttoned just so, clutching a thick manila folder like it contained legal documents. Behind her, leaning casually against my porch railing while scrolling his phone, was Kevin. He looked like this was just another Saturday errand. I didn't open the door. Instead, I called through it. "What do you want?" Her voice was sickeningly sweet. "I came to talk like adults and end this nonsense before it goes any further. I already said everything I needed to say." That's when her mask slipped, her tone turning ice cold. "I've been in touch with people who deserve to know the truth about you. I can make things very difficult if you don't drop this attitude." When I told her to leave, she bent down and slid the manila folder under my door instead. With growing dread, I opened it to find printed screenshots of old text conversations between Melissa and me. But these weren't complete conversations. They were carefully selected excerpts that made me look controlling and manipulative. Messages where I'd asked about repayment schedules appeared without the context of her desperate midnight calls begging for help. Suggestions that Kevin find more stable work were included without the surrounding texts about their mounting bills and eviction notices. Every piece of evidence had been surgically extracted to support a narrative where I was the bad guy. I realized immediately what she was doing. This wasn't about reconciliation, it was about rewriting history. And if she had physical copies of these texts, it meant she was already sharing them with others. I slid the folder back under the door without a word. Kevin chuckled outside, low and mocking. Mom's voice came through the door one final time. "You're throwing away the only people who care about you. One day you'll regret it." They lingered another minute, knocking once more before finally walking back to their car. I watched from my window as they left, noting that Mom didn't look angry, she looked satisfied, like she just planted a seed of doubt that would eventually pull me back into their orbit. But she was wrong. Seeing her escalate to this level of calculated manipulation only confirmed that there was nothing left worth salvaging. They didn't want me back because they missed me, they wanted me back in my assigned role as their financial safety net. That night, something clicked into place. This wasn't a temporary cooling-off period anymore. This was permanent. The next morning, I made a comprehensive list of every possible way they could still reach me. It was longer than expected: old group chats, forgotten email threads, even a shared streaming account I'd been paying for without realizing it. First, I changed my phone number, a step I'd always resisted because it felt too final. But the relief afterward was immediate, like I'd finally turned off a smoke alarm that had been shrieking for years. Then I systematically eliminated every digital connection, email filters to automatically delete anything from their addresses, social media accounts unfollowed and blocked, privacy settings locked down until I was essentially invisible to anyone outside my trusted circle. The financial cleanup was equally thorough. I closed the joint account I'd opened years ago to make emergency transfers easier. I canceled every automatic payment connected to them, including small things I'd forgotten about, like Kevin's monthly cloud storage subscription that had been coming out of my account since 2019. By afternoon, I'd accomplished something I hadn't experienced in years. I'd made my life completely my own again. But I knew it wouldn't be enough. Mom had already invaded my professional life once, and if she decided to escalate further, things could get ugly. So I placed fraud alerts on my credit, set up identity monitoring, and consulted a lawyer about the possibility of a harassment restraining order. The lawyer didn't think I'd need it yet, but advised me to document everything going forward. A few days later, my cousin Ava, one of the few family members who hadn't chosen sides, reached out to let me know that Mom was telling everyone I'd abandoned the family over a seeding joke and cut them off financially out of spite. When Ava asked if I wanted her to correct the record, I told her not to bother. The truth didn't need defending to people who had already decided not to see it. Exactly 1 week after their visit, a thick letter appeared in my mailbox. No return address, but I recognized Mom's handwriting immediately. I didn't open it. Instead, I filed it away with the other documentation from this whole mess. Whatever it contained, apology, threat, or emotional manipulation, the goal would be the same, pulling me back in. The silence since then has been total. No more door knocking, no more anonymous emails to my boss, no more block number calls in the middle of the night. It would be easy to believe that meant it was over. But I've known my family my entire life. Silence isn't peace, silence is planning. 1 month later, as I was walking home from work on a typical Tuesday evening, I spotted a dark SUV idling across the street from my building. At first, I didn't think much of it, people parked there regularly. But as I got closer, the driver's window rolled down, and Kevin's grinning face appeared. "Hey, Alex," he called out casually, like we were old friends catching up. "Thought I'd catch you before you went inside." I told him I wasn't interested in talking, but he wasn't deterred. Leaning forward with obvious excitement, he delivered his news. "Melissa's pregnant." I stood there holding my grocery bag, unsure what reaction he expected. Without waiting for a response, he launched into his prepared speech about how Melissa didn't want the baby growing up without knowing their uncle, how it was time to let go of past grudges, how families should be there for each other no matter what. Then came the line that revealed the true purpose of his ambush. "She thought maybe you'd want to help get things ready. You know, like you've always been there for us before." I could practically hear my mother's coaching in those words. When I offered simple congratulations but made it clear that nothing had changed, Kevin's smile faltered. As I turned to walk away, he delivered one final attempt at manipulation. "You don't want this kid to grow up thinking you're the kind of man who turns his back on family, do you?" I didn't dignify that with a response. I simply walked past him and into my building. I was no longer the family safety net, and I'd never been happier to disappoint people in my entire life.